Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Mahatma Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Well, on today's episode, we talk about finding ourselves, purpose and meaning, becoming a leader, being other-focused, and more. Our guest is a husband to his college sweetheart and a father of two. He served as the senior art director on the original startup team behind Priceline.com. He launched his own company in 2008 after being laid off during the economic downturn. And today, he and his team have launched hundreds of brands for clients ranging from startups to Fortune 500s. He's an advisor, a mentor, serves on the various nonprofit boards, and he's just an incredible human being. Please welcome the founder and creative director of Peralta Design, Ramon Peralta. Ramon, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat.
Likewise, Jay, I'm so excited this morning to just be on your show, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. So let's jump right in. I'm curious what words you would use to describe yourself today.
Purpose-driven, mission-driven. I would say in a good place. I turned 51 this year, and I think I'm just at a point now where I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm living in my purpose. I've attained a what some would call a certain level of success, but I'm more driven now by helping others achieve that level of success and even greater. So it's just my life has been a lot of ups and downs. But right now, I think that I finally realized I'm living in my purpose, and I'm just trusting the universe to just continue to guide me forward in helping others.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to dig into that a bit because I think there's an important story and lessons to be learned from those ups and downs that we all experience. But I want to ask you something about that opening quote from Mahatma Gandhi. As you hear that quote, what does that mean to you? And if you need me to repeat it, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, no, for me, it's about getting out of yourself. I think that as human beings, we have certain instincts of survival, we have drives, hunger, thirst. They're all very selfish, but they're instincts. They keep us alive. And so I think our natural tendency as human beings is to do what's best for us first. And when you go through adversity, which I refer to, and many can feel like this, the last couple of years, we've gone through a lot of adversity in the business community. I've found in my experience that getting out of self, overriding some of those instincts actually helps gets us through those difficult times. So I look back to when I got laid off. My first instinct was I need to find a job. But soon as that shifted to, there's probably a lot of people in my same position that need help getting their businesses going, something happened. So that shift became a growth engine. During the pandemic, that same mentality has helped us get through it as a business, not just get through it, but to thrive. And so I really believe that what Mahatma Gandhi is talking about is that we're here for something greater than ourselves. We're put on this earth for a higher purpose. And when we start to think of others, instead of always thinking of ourselves, it just opens up a whole new world for us. And it gets us through those tough times. because there are some inherent rewards in helping others and feeling like, okay, I did something good. I made the world a better place. I left it better than I found it. And you find that tenet in so many religions and organizations. I mean, you can even look at the Boy Scouts. Any philanthropic type service driven organization is going to have some common denominators there, and it's usually service and service above self.
Absolutely. Well, beautifully said. So let's wind the clock back a bit on your journey. So your parents immigrated here to the U.S. From the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
And came to New York City, which is where you were born, and you have 4 siblings.
Yes.
So take us back a bit, and what was life like for you as you were growing up? And when we think about business today, and we think about the things that you're doing today and some of the ways that you serve, are you able to tie back to some of the lessons that you learned from your upbringing, from your mother and father, and from your siblings? And let's talk about that a bit.
Absolutely. So, I was the oldest of 5, and I remember just the drive, the work ethic that my parents had, and yes, I was born in New York, but the rest of my siblings were born in Providence. And the reason, I asked my parents, well, why did you guys move? And they literally moved to Providence in search of work. Back in the early 70s, Providence, Rhode Island was known as a junk jewelry capital. So there were a lot of factories that produced jewelry, a lot of manual labor, and they needed bodies. And so there was a great migration from New York City up to Providence. And so the rest of my siblings were born there. But my dad, he became bored. And so he began fixing cars in the yard, and ultimately ended up going to school for fixing cars. He attended Rhode Island Trade Shop School. And I was observing that whole process. And ultimately, he ended up having his own business, which sparked that entrepreneurship in me. But even as an early age, when I think back to how old he was at the time that I saw him collecting rent, because he ended up buying 2-3 tenement apartment houses, and we lived in one, and we would bounce around. But just that experience, that I would go with him to collect rent, or I would help him, I would hand tools to him because I was the oldest of 5. I felt a responsibility or a sense of leadership at a very early age, probably earlier than most. And so I've always been wired with this idea that if it's not me, then who? And also a sense of leadership and being the oldest, because for a long time, I remember Saturday mornings, the rest of my siblings could watch cartoons and stay home, but I would go with my dad to the scrap yards to pick parts and things like that. And the flip side is I got to spend a lot of time with him because he was working all the time. But as a youngster, I didn't quite understand. I actually had a resentment because I was like, well, why do I have to go? And it wasn't until much later that I realized what a gift that was, because I think it planted the seeds in me of having a strong work ethic, of understanding the value of a dollar, of taking leadership, of servicing for others. Because if I really think about it, I was helping my family. If I was helping my dad, I was actually helping my family. So even at a young age, I was somewhat of a provider. And I think I've carried that well into my business career. And I try to plant that seed in other young people as well, to have an innate sense of leadership and an innate sense of responsibility. Even if it means that you're servicing others, it's okay. It's like, because someone has to do it, why not you? And I really appreciated those lessons.
Yeah, wonderful. So you mentioned that your father had purchased a few buildings. Had he had mentors at this point? Where did the the idea to be able to invest in real estate and how that could change lives? Where did that begin to germinate?
And so my dad was the youngest of 13. So he had he had many older siblings, and they had been buying a property in New York City. And I think that when he moved to Providence, he realized, wow, the real estate here is a lot more affordable than it is in New York City. But he did learn from others. In fact, it would amaze me at times because I remember, and this is one of those moments, Jay, I don't know if this interview was going in that direction, but this is one of those moments where it's hard to explain other than it being grace or the universe or what have you. But there was a time in middle school where I was at a pretty rough middle school in Providence, and I had gotten wind that it was going to merge with another middle school. And this is in my book as well, because I think it's one of those turning points. And I remember coming home and telling my parents at the age of 10, maybe, because I was in 5th grade, I said, Mom, Dad, you've got to get me out of this school because next year the school's going to merge and the classrooms are going to be even bigger. And I can't, if I continue to attend school there, it's just not going to work out well. And at the time, my dad was still working in the factories, but he must have had a peer group that spoke to him about this, or that he asked about this too. And before I knew it, the following year, I was at a private school. So I went to a private Catholic school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I was kind of a fish out of water because I went from the inner city into like a more suburban setting, which as an adult has made me more well-rounded, I believe. But I still don't know how that happened, and I do believe that it was a peer group that he had and some foresight on my part to say, hey, time out here, we've got to do something, and that they listened. And so I really, really owe a lot to my parents, to how they've guided me throughout my educational process. And I believe that's also a big driver for me because I don't ever want to squander those types of sacrifices they made, those decisions they made. I don't know how they put the rest of my siblings attended that same Catholic school. I don't know how they did it, but they figured it out.
Amazing. Well, when the desire is there, when you understand what the need is, it's incredible how we start to attract the resources and the people and all of those things that we need to make things happen. But we have to be open to them, aware of them, and have a strong enough desire and belief in order to bring those things to fruition. So it is quite a remarkable story. So, I mentioned about the 2008 economic downturn, how that impacted you, the change that occurred at that point. There are moments in our lives that define us. They often change the course of our lives. As you look back over your life to this point in your career, what is one of those defining moments that you've experienced? And if it wasn't that particular time, that 2008 economic downturn, what was it for you? And what did you learn from that experience?
Well, there were two moments. The first one was in '08, and I've shared this before, but I literally remember getting on my knees and kind of giving up the fear of financial insecurity, just giving it up, giving it away to the universe. I remember having had only 2 calls in 10 months for job opportunities and really letting it sink in that I was going to have to make a go at doing my own thing. And I remember a specific prayer where I just said, God, if I'm supposed to sell the house, I'll sell it. If I'm supposed to sell the cars, I'll sell them. But if this is what you want me to do, I will pursue it. And that was a turning point because then I went full on. I put together a portfolio of my work. I was pounding the pavement, literally. dropping them off at businesses. I was calling anyone in my network, letting them know that I was looking for work and that I was available. But I made a full-on go at it. I stopped applying for jobs at that point. So that was a turning point. And it was a weight off my shoulders, because for a long time, I was trying to start the business and I was trying to find a job, and you can't serve two masters. I needed to focus. And so that was a turning point. Another one that I'll share that's more recent, really just told me how much I've evolved over the last 14, 15 years that I've been in business, and where I am in my business today. Because we had applied for an opportunity with a major retailer, in here in the States, and this opportunity would have been a game changer for us. And I had a contact who I felt we had a kind of a shoe-in with this opportunity. We were going to be producing some recruitment videos for this major retail chain. And we pitched, we presented, we even did a little extra work. We put like a little sizzle reel together. We really felt good about our odds at winning. And unfortunately, we did not. So, hey, you win some, you lose some, right? Well, this contact from this major retailer contacted me and said, hey, by the way, would you mind mentoring this young man who has a creative agency, he's just starting out, but he's super talented, and I think he could benefit a lot from your experience. Would you mind if I connect you to him? And oh, by the way, he's who we awarded that project to. And I almost fell off my chair, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I said, do you realize how crazy that sounds? What you've just asked me to do? You want me to mentor the young man who won the job that we lost from your major retailer client? And he says, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And I said to him in the next breath, sure, connect us, absolutely. I would love to talk to him. And it was one of those moments where I don't know that I would have answered it that way 10 years ago, maybe a week ago. I don't know, but I saw it as a realization that in those nanoseconds, Jay, I said to myself, this young man had as much to do with winning the job as I did with losing the job. It was a decision that was beyond both of our control. And I said, if he is starting out, he may be in over his head with this opportunity. Now, there's a difference here. If the consulting that I'm going to do is about that project, then good business would say that I should be paid by the retailer. But that didn't seem what it sounded like. To me, it was more or less, this young man probably needs guidance on pricing structure, scaling, expanding, growing, hiring, maybe even, creating a strategic partnership between the two of us. And so I agreed to have a phone call with him, and we were connected over email. But I think those are two examples, Jay, to answer your question, where they were pivotal, because it's one thing to talk about service, but when you're put on a spot like that, I looked at it as a test that the universe kind of threw at me and said, okay, you talk all this game about helping others. What are you going to do now? And I believe I passed, but I also believe it was sincere. And I also believe it was the right thing to do. And so I'll end it there, Jay. I think it's just one of those moments where you have to take a step back and say, and to quote Martin Luther King, the time is always right to do the right thing.
Excellent.
So
and an excellent quote, and what a powerful story or example of doing the right thing and not focusing on yourself or what do I get out of this, right? How can I help? How can I pour into someone else without the expectation of receiving something in return? And as you were telling the second story about this opportunity to mentor this young man, I was trying to think through, if I were in a similar situation, number one, how would I respond? And I know myself well enough today to know how I would respond. But then number two, what did you learn about yourself in that moment? Because had that same opportunity presented itself a week ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, you would have been in a different place.
Right.
And you would have been a different person. So in that instant, is there something that you discovered about you that you can share with us?
I discovered that I do, that I am committed and that I am sincere and that I am truly walking the path that I want to be walking today. When I was 17, I made a promise. I made a promise to my higher power that if I ever had an opportunity, if anyone ever asked me to speak to a young person, that I would always do it. And that's because right after high school, I had a close call that jeopardized my college career, and I was given a second chance, and I was able to attend college where I met my wife, and my life could have gone in a completely different path. But because of that moment, I remember saying, God, if anyone ever asked me to speak to young people or motivate them or inspire them, I will always say yes. And what I learned about myself is that I'm finally in a place, because the only thing that would ever impede that, Jay, is time. When you're not in control of your time, when you're an employee, when you're going through a difficult time where you have too many commitments or you haven't properly managed your time, it's difficult. People often ask me, how can you sound busy? How can you be at all of these places? What struck me at that moment and what I learned about myself is that at this age, I'm finally in control of my time. So if this young man needs mentorship, now it's up to him to contact me and set up the time and all that. And most people don't do that. They don't take advantage of those situations, but we did connect on email. I'm confident right now where I am in my life that I can find some room on my calendar for him. I can decide how to spend my time. You can say, well, it's because you've built this great team and the company runs on its own, and you have confidence in them. But it's also that I value my time and I can decide how I want to spend it. And to me, that's success. You can say it's about having all this money, but if you're tied down to your job and you can't take weekends off and you can't spend time with your family and you can't take time for your health, I know you work out quite often, which is very inspiring and important. What good is all that money if you're not taking care of your health, if you're not spending time with your family, if you're not helping others, right? So I've achieved a level of success where I can control my time and I can use it to help others. And to me, that's probably more important than the dollar amount that I may or may not have in the bank at this moment.
Wonderful. And I just want to make sure that we are noting here that not only would this young man who you are connected to be a mentee of yours, if that's meant to be, but you also mentor others. You mentor other youths, and you volunteer a fair amount of your time, and always seem to be looking for ways to give back and to help inspire and to help others grow, which ties back to your overarching purpose and mission, which I think is a beautiful thing. So let's shift for a moment to building Peralta Design. And I want to make a a comment here that this is actually your second appearance on Business Minds Coffee Chat. You and I had a conversation back in 2020. I believe it was episode 3, which we'll link to in case people want to go back and check that conversation out. Because during that conversation, we talked about culture and the importance of building culture in your organization. Today, what I want to talk about is leadership. And I want to talk specifically, Ramon, about you as a leader. And your business has, just like we change as individuals, as everything in life changes, your business has changed from the time that we last spoke and from the time that you started your business. And you as a leader have changed as well. So I'd love it if you would spend a couple moments talking about not only the importance of leadership, but what makes an effective leader based on your experience. And then the third component to this is about where your business is growing and who you need to become as a leader to be able to carry that business forward. So let's talk about those components here for a couple minutes.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there, but I appreciate it. I do, because I've definitely grown as a leader over the last couple of years. Our team has grown. I would like to say empathy is probably the biggest area of growth. And one of the most important factors in leadership, in my opinion, is empathy and the ability to understand the temperature in the room. And what I mean by that is having a high enough emotional intelligence where you can sense when you need to have a conversation with someone. You can sense when you need to have a conversation with a client. You can sense where there's a particular theme that's important to bring up during a staff meeting. It's almost having a form of ESP, but as a leader, you have to be proactive in those situations and not wait for crisis to bring something up, because there are always signs, right? If you're a doctor, you don't wait. Right? We're supposed to get an annual physical because you're not supposed to wait until you have a heart attack to realize you had high blood pressure for the last 5 years, right? There are always signs, there are always symptoms. And so as leaders of teams in particular, in my case, we're looking for the symptoms way before the crisis, happens, so that you can not only avert those crises, but the team, they also don't want to wait until there's a crisis, right? They enjoy working in an environment where there's good energy, there's good creativity, there's great collaboration, and as a leader, they're understanding that if I'm not paying attention, what good am I sitting in an ivory, castle, if I'm not paying attention to the symptoms? And so when you can avert crisis as a leader, you gain the respect of the team, and you're also grooming them. And what I mean by that is that great leaders model behavior, because my job is to create the next generation of leaders. So when I'm not there, when I come to our Palm Coast office, I have to make sure that there's leadership in place at our Connecticut office. And I do that by modeling behavior. So empathy, modeling behavior, grooming the next generation, and empowering that next generation of leaders is so important in developing any business. If I hold everything to the chest, if I am not transparent, if I am hiding or deceitful or in any way not being truthful with the state of the company or the direction that the company is going in, then you're not only am I not modeling behavior or modeling the wrong behavior, but I am not introducing this idea of ownership with the team. And so the team has to feel vested. They have to feel part of, and all of that is done through leadership. So it's very important in scaling and growing and in developing that culture. So one of the things that we've implemented during the last couple of years is that we have a round of kudos in our staff meetings where people can share something they're proud of from the previous week, or a team member can give kudos to another team member if they've noticed something that they've done. And so it's always part of the beginning of our staff meetings. It's a way of recapping, it's a way of recognizing, and it's a way of encouraging that positive behavior. And recently one of my team members actually imparted kudos on me, which is always awkward. I don't know. I don't do well with compliments, and I want this to always be about somebody else. But in this case here, Kevin actually said he wanted to give kudos to me, and I said, well, what about? And he says, well, you're not just talking, you're walking it. You're actually living it. What you say that we do. We have our values on the wall of our conference room, and he says, you're actually living it. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he said, well, we have a client that we've given probably $25,000 worth of in-kind service donations to, because she's trying to cure cancer. This woman we believe she believes she may have the cure for cancer. Now, Jay, this could be huge. The problem is she's trying to raise $10 million so that she can do human trials on this technology that she has. So because we believe in her, we partnered with her last year, and like I said, we did $25,000 worth of in-kind services for her. Well, now she's back. So Kevin says, Ramon, the doctor is on line one. Do you want to take it? And I said, sure, put her through. And actually, we were on a Google, a live Google meeting. Mm-hmm. So Kevin's on there, I'm on there, Jorge's on there, and Dr. Green is on there as well. And we talked to her. We said, how are things going? How can we help you? How can we continue to help you? But is there any way that by now you've raised some capital so that you're able to also cover some of the expenses, so that we're not going into this 100%, in kind? And so we had the conversation. We found out what she needed, and we put a proposal together for her. We submitted it to her. We offered her a partial in-kind donation at this point, but we still listened to her and wanted to hear her out and everything. And Kevin said at the staff meeting, he said, the fact that you took that call, knowing that we were probably going to go deeper in on helping her, showed me that you really are about helping others, because everyone in my office has been affected by cancer in one way or another. We've all lost a loved one to it. And so it's something that, again, we can control our time. We can choose what we want to spend our time on. And that was important to me, because I know that every one of us in our office has been affected by it. And he says, that meant to me that you really are about helping others and not just about, the dollar bills. And so leaders have to walk the walk. We can't just put up a meme or put up a quote on our Facebook or on our LinkedIn, because our teams are watching, our clients are watching, our families are watching. We've never lived more under a camera than these current times. And so I really implore the leaders out there, the business leaders that have teams, their teams are watching, and you make an impact. And if you really are trying to serve others, do that with you can do that with your teams by modeling the behavior that you say you practice. And you can't expect your teams to live up to your values if you yourself are not living up to your values.
So true. And such an important point. And I love that. I love that saying, model the behavior that you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And if, as you look around your own organization, if you see areas or if you've identified those areas where there are some gaps,
Mm-hmm.
typically we have to look ourselves in the mirror because we ourselves are not living either those values or demonstrating those behaviors.
Right.
So it takes that self-awareness, and to your point, realizing that we're under scrutiny, right? We're always being watched, the way we communicate, the actions that we take, mm-hmm. our behaviors, habits, all of those things matter. Mm-hmm. So let's carry the conversation forward, and let's talk about, as Peralta Design continues to grow and to scale and attract even more clients, who do you need to become to lead this business as it continues to grow? Where do you identify those growth opportunities for yourself so you can become the best version of who you are?
Well, I believe that we're going to continue to see record numbers of new businesses opening year after year. I think the last 2 years have really sparked a new wave of entrepreneurship. They talk about the Great Resignation, where people that have been working from home or have been at companies for a very long time, and those companies are not being as empathetic or as flexible as they need to be during these times, are losing really good employees, and those employees are venturing out and starting their own company. So I see an even greater wave of new entrepreneurs coming out, and in that there are even greater resources available for those businesses. And so Peralta Design needs to continue to grow to a point where I can continue to spend even more time mentoring and serving on those boards of those organizations that are nurturing the most vulnerable of our small businesses. I know that that's not where the money is. I understand that, but I am determined and dedicated to helping those people that have been displaced from jobs, people that are trying to start a business but don't have capital, or don't have the inheritance, or don't have anything handed to them. But so I'm talking about the disadvantaged, the minority businesses, the veteran-owned businesses, the women-owned businesses, the non-traditional business owners that have a dream of business ownership, but just don't know where to go or what to do. So my book is going to be dedicated to them. And I want to continue speaking on that topic, and I enjoy serving on boards of colleges, community organizations, co-working establishments. There's a great program in Hartford, Connecticut called Reset Social Trust, because if we build stronger businesses, Jay, we build stronger communities. Mm. Which are comprised of stronger families. So it benefits all of us. It benefits society as a whole to have a strong, robust business community. And the ones that often get the short end of the stick are those small and disadvantaged businesses. And we saw it when PPP was released, and you needed to have a 941 tax form, and you needed to have people on W-2 payroll. Those small businesses, those mom and pops, many of them were on 1099, if they even knew what that was. And so there is a segment of our population that I want to continue to serve, to get them to that next level, to help them understand the taxes. And I'm not an accountant, but just understand the process of being a legitimate business. I'm going to continue to focus on the branding, the messaging, their digital footprint, the things that we specialize in at Peralta Design. But I want to share my story because it's a tale of, there's the rich dad, poor dad. Well, my dad worked his butt off, but just didn't really understand the tax implications that come along with running a business. So he was not very financially literate. And so from day one, I made it a point to always, dot my I's and cross my T's on all of my tax forms, because I saw that it was a detriment to my dad not understanding that, yes, Dad, when you get that payment, not all of that is yours. Some of that goes to Uncle Sam. And so those things are very, very critical to small businesses, and that there are programs out there. Like I volunteer with SCORE. I know you're very familiar with SCORE. That's a great organization for small businesses. So Peralta Design is going to continue to grow and develop leaders within it. We're going to continue to help other businesses be successful. And in turn, it allows me to continue helping those other businesses that are vulnerable. And ultimately, yes, they become part of our funnel. There is a percentage of those businesses that we help through these other various programs that may or may not become clients of Peralta Design, but that's not the real focus of why I do it. But it is there. If you're going to be doing service, why not go for the trifecta that you're helping others, you're doing what you love, and you can make a living with it? I think that's something that we all deserve.
Absolutely. Well, you've demonstrated that you do walk the talk. So when you receive the kudos in your team meeting, these are things that you demonstrate on a regular basis. You demonstrate them through your actions. And you're also, what I appreciate, and as you and I have gotten to know one another, you play the long game. So you understand the value in long-term thinking, balancing that obviously with short-term as well. But you're looking at how can I help someone else be successful? That's first and foremost, right? So it is about service. But knowing that if I do the right things and I give, that the law of reciprocity has a way of showing itself and coming back around. And you've built your business on serving and giving back to others and always providing value. So you have referenced the book a couple of times in this conversation. So let's pull the lens back a bit and open the curtains on your book, which you've written, which is going to be coming out in Q1 of 2022. So by the time this episode airs, let's hope that book will be available for purchase at that time. Yes. Tell us about the book. What's it called, and what is the premise of what you have written? Absolutely.
So the book is entitled Launch Your Own Brand with Momentum. And it is basically going to comprise of my initial story, my personal story, some of which we shared here in this podcast as the preface to the book. And then it's going to go into kind of a book version of my brand new workshop seminar series. The book's been, a 2-year long process. It's going to cover branding, messaging, brand identity. It's going to cover web development, and it's going to cover digital marketing or creating a funnel for sales in your business. But it's essentially a handbook for that small business owner or that entrepreneur that wants to start a business but doesn't know what to do first. We go over naming, we go over, developing your imaging and your story, everything that you need to kind of establish yourself from a branding perspective. There are resources in there for SCORE and all that other stuff for more technical, but it's going to be hopefully an inspiring story of the development of Peralta Design, but also kind of a practical guide for getting those 3 things set up. And then I'll include some case studies on leadership, on scaling, because I've been inspired myself by a lot of other authors. The E-Myth is one that I love, by Michael Gerber, From Good to Great, The Go-Giver, and Go-Givers Sell More. So I share a lot of my own experience in there, and I hope that it inspires others to go for it and have some guidance so that perhaps you can attain a level of success in your business, however that's defined to you, in a much shorter time span that it took me. And I've had many people in my life that have guided me, that have mentored me, that have inspired me. And so I want to be in that company. I want to be who I wish had been there for me. Hopefully I can do that for someone else with this book. And so, I'm really looking forward to launching it finally. As you know, Jay, it's finding time. We keep talking about time, but finding the time to actually get it done. And staying true to the mission of the book is super important. It's going to have a foreword by Chris Jarvis, who I've introduced you to and you've met, and he's an amazing person. He's mentored me and inspired me as well. So he's going to have the beginning of theirs, going to talk about his Pathfinder and being the giraffe and being different. So a common denominator throughout the book is going to be, finding a differentiator for your business, what makes you different. And I think we all have such a unique story that we lead with that instead of leading with our services. We'll have a better shot at differentiating our businesses. And I also believe firmly that this idea of businesses getting behind social causes, it's not going to go away. 80% of millennials now prefer or look for brands to support brands that are also supporting the social causes that they find important to them. And if we go back 10, 20 years, we see businesses almost being agnostic to what's going on in the world socially. And now we're seeing the opposite. So you're going to see more and more brands like Patagonia and Nike and Adidas and Ben & Jerry's getting more vocal about the issues that are important to them. And there's a little bit of that in my book as well, which is the momentum part, because I think you can launch your brand, and if you're too agnostic about what's going on in the world, you run the risk of kind of fading into the background. So you've got to pick those causes that are important to you and align those with your business. And I think that's going to help your business launch with more momentum. And so I talk a bit about brands and social causes as well.
Outstanding. Well, very much looking forward to that book launch, and congratulations on getting it to a point where it's ready for publishing. And I have to ask, for those who are interested in writing their own books, what was the writing process like for you?
Well, I hired a writing coach and worked with a coach to work on an outline. For me, having the strong outline was key. In the beginning, I consulted with Chris Jarvis because he's written about 15 books, and he basically just said, write. So the most basic advice I can give anyone considering this is just write. Whenever you're prompted, whenever you're in the mood, because as any creative knows, you have to sort of tap into the ether and feel like, okay, I'm in that mode. I'm ready to write. And when you ever get the urge to write, just start writing things down and then organize it later. So I did quite a bit of writing in the beginning, and then created an outline. And then I took what I had written down and tried to put it where it belonged. And there were some parts that just didn't make the outline. So you end up writing a book about this and a book about that and a book about, so you have to kind of figure out what's the purpose of this book, and then stick to it. Because when you do just write, it's good for creativity because you want to get as much down as you can. And then you just got to be prepared to trim the fat and make it fit into the outline. And so having a strong outline would be my best advice. But in the beginning, I think it's more important to just write. If you're not quite sure what the book is going to be about, but you just want to write, just write and write and write and write. And then later on, who knows, maybe you might end up with 2 or 3 books, who knows?
That's right. Great advice. Take action just right and
Yes.
make it a practice, right?
Yes.
Replace bad habits and just keep going after it. I love it.
Yes.
As we wrap up our time together today, what is a challenge that you would like to leave our audience with?
I would say that a challenge would be, as we move into this new year, is set a really high goal for yourself as to what area do you feel that you need to improve in the most as a person. Be completely honest with yourself, whether it's an addiction you might have, whether it's your health, whether it's spending more time with family. Just set a goal for yourself, and make this the year that you do it. I would just say that having people in your life that challenge you is super important. I have a trainer. I have mentors that I can call on for different areas in my life. We can't pull out information out of a vacuum. So my challenge for you would be to pick one thing that you want to improve in your life in 2022, and then find someone that's, I would say, a coach in that area or a subject matter expert in that area. And if you don't already have a relationship with that person, establish one so that you have someone to hold you accountable. Because setting goals is one thing, but holding yourself accountable to them is something completely different. So find one thing that you want to improve in 2022, match it with a subject matter expert, start a relationship with them, and have them hold you accountable.
Boom. All right. How about that, everybody? Make sure that you, from Ramon's lips to your ears, make sure that you execute on that. I love it. So, Ramon, before I ask my final question to you, share with us where we can connect with you. I also want to mention that you do have your own podcast called Mission Control. So share with us where we can listen to your podcast, be able to consume your content, and learn more about all the great things that you do.
Absolutely. So I'm very active on Facebook. So you can find me there. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/Ramon Peralta. And I'm also active on Instagram, Peralta Design, or Peralta Design HQ is our company Instagram account. So we're very active on those social media platforms. Mission Control is our podcast where we talk about branding and entrepreneurship, and we have some very inspiring guests on the show. And that can be found on all the major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so forth. And it's also available on our website, peraltadesign.com/mission control. And control is spelt like the keyboard, CTRL.
Perfect. Well, we will certainly link to all of those areas in the show notes here. So here is my final question to you. What is one of the most valuable lessons that you've learned from a client that you didn't expect at the time?
From a client standpoint, so I have to think of, you learn the most from your most difficult or most challenging clients. I would say that even if you think you're doing a great job at communicating, you can do an even better job at communicating. So I think even being more responsive. And I've been quoted, and I've said this in many of our videos. One of the biggest pain points for agencies is response time, and lack of communication or lack of transparency. So it's one of those areas that can always improve. And that's something that was surprising to me, because I believe that we practice what we preach. We do a really good job at it, but you can always do better. And I recently did a video about this idea of a collective culture. And I used the metaphor of a restaurant. So if you're in a service business, if you've ever been to a restaurant, you've had one waiter, and you're sitting there and you're waiting for that waiter to come back and you're looking around the restaurant, it's not the best experience. But when you've patronize a restaurant where they have a team of waiters servicing the table, you have a waiter that brings you water, you have a waiter that takes your order, you have a waiter that brings your food. That's an entirely different experience, and a much better experience. So what we've been practicing is more of a collective culture where even if it is quote unquote your account or your client, it's okay for that client to be serviced by more than one person. You still have a main point of contact or a project leader, but the clients appreciate multiple touch points. So anytime that they're contacting you, if you can't reply right away, communicate that to another team member so that you can get back to that client and just say, we got this, we're working on it. It could be a very short response, but just touch points back and forth with a client has been a big learning experience for us that I don't know if it's the pandemic. I don't know if it's just the way business is shifting, but response time has got to be even greater than what you think it is. And if you think that, taking 2 weeks to get back to a client is okay, or a week or even a day, you got to change that because you need to be more responsive. And that's something that was a surprise because I believe that we're very responsive, but I think that's an area that we can continuously improve on.
Well said. And that's a great lesson for all of us to learn from. And always know this: we can always improve. We can always get better. There are areas that we can all continue to grow. And if you think you have it all figured out, the reality is you do not. So there's opportunity there. Figure out where you can see the greatest return and focus on growing those areas and look to always improve and grow. So, Ramon, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Round 2 on Business Minds Coffee Chat. Thank you for sharing of your story, sharing of your knowledge, and providing our audience such great words of wisdom and lessons that you've learned as you continue to grow and as you continue to evolve in building Peralta Design. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. And I just want to end this by saying to everyone out there to be authentic. Be authentic in your brand story. As you talk about your business, make sure that your personal authenticity is interwoven into your brand story, as it will help your business stand out and be more successful.
How about that? Couldn't have said it better. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. And please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love to hear what you thought about this particular episode, and to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can help build a solid foundation for your service-based business. All you have to do is visit jshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Business Consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.